Well, Change Renaissance Man here, and a little bit about the current state of affairs in the UK. And we have a lot of people talking about the politics. We hear an awful lot about people's personal opinions, and indeed my own personal opinion is going to be reflected in this. We've had a lot of unrest around things that are happening in the UK today, and I've heard different stories that Keir Starmer's going to resign, and then he's saying he's going to fight it out to the end, etc., etc. But look, let's be honest. I'm going to really aim at the political board rather than just Labour, although Labour have got themselves into a very, very bad situation, and a lot of the policies that Labour have put out just recently have been very much far left, dictatorial, and very, very anti-free speech, freedoms, etc., etc. And I'm not surprised at this. Keir Starmer has not exactly been covered with glory even before his Prime Minister days. Now, there are a lot of people who had high hopes for him, but as it turns out, he was very comfortable shouting about what should happen when he was in opposition. But like I said to everybody, anybody can shout out words, they can shout out questions, they can question the establishment all they want. Indeed, Kemi Badenoch seems particularly good at doing that, but she herself is without blemish, and we all are, and especially in politics, a lot of people are not without blemish. Let's be perfectly honest. Everybody has a history. Everybody's gotten things wrong, and they've made mistakes, and perhaps they have really kind of gone over the line. And this is really where I want to come in from this point, because we've got to look not just at how well a political opponent dissects their opposition's arguments. We have to ask ourselves, are they fit for leadership, for governance, and are they able to actually bring through the politics and the changes that are necessary? Because let's be honest, the UK is in a dreadful state of repair, and we are being led by a party that has caused a lot of this. Now, I will say this has stemmed from way before the mid-2020s, way before the 2020s, and we have to look back at David Cameron, who quite frankly should be pulled back and investigated. When you become a Prime Minister, your prime function is, as a party, as a governance, to do one thing: follow the dictates of the people who placed you in that position. That means the voters. Now, voters, again, I'm going to say, can be just as dumb. There is a saying that people as a mob are angry, afraid, and unintelligent. and they will stampede at the first sign of panic. We can see this all through history, we really can. Or they can take up arms, or they'll fight against the establishment out of anger, fear, worry, all these things. It didn't take that much for Cromwell to form a revolt against the king and to ultimately win. It did not take him that much. He had a few clever speeches, but ultimately he preyed upon the fears of the people as well. Indeed, when they were leading the king to the executioner's block, people were crying, people were sobbing and shouting, "God save the king, God bless him." As a people. So going back to the problem we have David Cameron, who defied the will of the people with the Brexit. Whether you are for or against, there are plenty of arguments for or against, and I'm not going to insult anybody by saying they are dumb for believing one or the other, because everybody is entitled to their opinion. Indeed, there were good points about the European economy. I liked the idea of a market where all the countries can come and trade, and they can take away from it, and they can prosper and increase trade. I liked that idea very much. I was for that idea. What I was against was the idea of a union that had vast amounts of military control that would ultimately overrun each and every single country. Germany, the Germans, the French, a lot of the people were of the same opinion, and indeed there are many French people, German people and Spanish people who say exactly the same thing. The people of Britain decided to come out of the European Union, and David Cameron was given the mandate to oversee that. And what happened? He resigned because he didn't believe in it. Whether you believe in it or do not believe in it is irrelevant when you are in leadership, governed by the people, and you are there to do the will of the people. Your beliefs are irrelevant. You can campaign, you can do whatever you wish to say, well, look, here is this, this and this, but if the people speak, and if the people vote and say, no, we want out, then it is quite simply the fact that we are out and we self-govern. It's as simple as that. And David Cameron certainly should be brought up on fraud charges, because with him resigning, certainly he did not believe in that mandate. He did not take up the premiership to do the will of the people. He was there for his own designs, and the one thing that a prime minister is charged with is not to push his own personal agenda. We may all have thoughts of like, oh, we'll go in to be a prime minister or anything to do to affect this and this, but in reality, you are there to do the will of the people and to serve the country. That is what you are there to do. So then from there we had an absolute foul up of all of the Conservative Party. Each Prime Minister, 5 in 5 years, was unfit to be the Premier. They had no clue how to govern. No clue on that. Going back before that, we had the absolute catastrophe with Gordon Brown, who sold the gold reserves and essentially sold them at the lowest possible time, where the gold was in its lowest, rather than actually investing and saying, hey, you know what, we'll actually work with it and improve it. He sold that, and he literally said, here's the end of it. And then it just went from bad to worse, bad to worse. We had the Tory government with 5 prime ministers. Then we had the fake demic, where Gordon Brown was completely useless. With that, the lockdown has actually been discovered that should never have happened in the first place. We had a fearful leadership. We did not have a bold leadership. And now we are at this stage where we have someone who was constantly shouting down Boris Johnson, but ultimately was guilty of several things himself. Now on to the main points that we have. Whether Keir Starmer resigns or not, it is no victory. And I'm going to repeat that, it's no victory, because we will inherit, without voting, without the people's voice, we will inherit someone whose core ideals lie in exactly the same way as Keir Starmer. We will be landed with a government that is in office but without any real power, and they will try and manipulate, and they will try and do everything they possibly can to keep their claws into what little power they have remaining. The only possible way to salvage anything and to build this country is to have a government that will do the following: withdraw all aid, foreign aid relief to different companies, and to pour it back into the country, and to pour it into industry, to pour it into all the things that we should be doing. Farming, we should be pouring it into manufacturing, we should be pouring it into this country, because we, as a nation, have no British industry. Everything that is manufactured by overseas countries. We have no actual manufacturing by British companies employing British people. All our call centres are in the Middle East, are in other countries, not here. We need to take down the VAT. We need to drop the drastic tax hikes that the Labour Party have done. We need to stop this VAT on education for private schools. We need to ensure that all money, all charities, where they are set up, to focus on the British people. We need to be ejecting all illegal aliens. We need to be rejecting all the asylum seekers, and all the saying, all these people come into the country and made Britain what it is today, and they say they built up Britain. Well, why haven't they built up their own countries? Take a look at all these countries. All these countries are third world countries. They have done nothing for their own country. They should have been coming here, working, get educated, go back to the country, build up the country so that it becomes better, and ultimately become equal traders. Immigrants have provided workers. They have not built the country. The country was built by English and British people. So in short, we need to have a government that is going to really kind of pour everything back into the UK, build up our military, we need to build up a solid base, and we need to get people working hard again. We need a proper medical institution. We need to stop paying money into the World Health Organization and say we have some amazing technology that we can research and provide cures for the sicknesses that people suffer. We need to be developing our own cures. We need to be developing our own cures for cancers, for all other things. And at the moment, this is just not happening. So, when I've talked about this, I've been taught and told that I'm far right. Well, if anything I have said is far right, please let me know. Please let me know. I have said nothing that is not factual in this. Alright? Now, I do recognise there are some people who are in need of help. I recognise this. There are some genuine cases where people are in war-torn countries. However, it is the responsibility of world leaders to sort this out and sort the Middle East. There is a simple answer. All the world leaders should say, right, we will completely and utterly barricade in the Middle East, put borders around, we ensure that this does not escape the Middle East, and let them fight it out amongst themselves. And when they're completely diminished, we set up the governments respectively and say, right, you govern in peace. That is the only way we can bring an end to the conflicts in the Middle East. And that is for people to get so sick and tired of killing each other and not bringing anybody else into the conflict that they want to live in peace. And we should be ensuring that by barricading everybody in and saying, you know what, when you've had enough, then we'll talk. And, I do feel sorry for people who are caught up in that. I genuinely do. But at the end of the day, the reality is that if these people continue fighting for their respective governments, what can you do? What can you do? The final thing that needs to happen is that the circle needs to be broken in the country here as well. That everybody who governs comes from the same institution. They come from the same schools, they come from the same backgrounds, they come from the same places that they have done for generations after generations. That needs to be stopped. That needs to be stopped, and everybody needs to have the same opportunities of education to enter in and to go and to be able to become part of that system as well. So these are just a few thoughts that I have. I'm not going to discuss my own personal politics. I'm not going to do that. All I'm saying is that here are my thoughts. Here's where I have these observations. You can either agree or not agree. If you want to start name calling me and start being disrespectful, then really you're not going to win any arguments by that. All you're doing is proving that you can call people names. Let's be honest with that. But I am very much open to people suggesting better ways. I will say this finally. We have a moral responsibility to vote for that which is good, just, and enhances the freedom of the British and English people, and brings the English and British people into prosperity, and that comes from English and British people. And there is nothing wrong with saying that. It's as it should be. I'll leave you with those thoughts, and have a great day. Catch you all later.